Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed the previous episode with Nicole Shiflett. Good luck to her with all of her projects in that acting world. But I'm back today with a brand new guest. Want to welcome to the podcast for the very first time, Miss Dani Hagan. How are you?
Excellent. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. So your fellow California person, huh?
These days, yes. Not originally, but California's home at this point.
Yeah, the LA area?
Yes, Los Angeles. I'm in Beverly Hills.
Okay, cool. Yeah. See, like, it's really weird because when I do this podcast, I'm like, okay, yeah, people from the Midwest, people from other countries, people from all over the world. We could have done this in person even, but we're good on Zoom here. So again, I want to, thank you for jumping on. Definitely want to pick your brain and see what you're doing in the music world there. So let's just jump into it, right? You're a musician.
I am. I'm a singer and a songwriter out here in LA.
And you're in a band right now, right? What's the name of your band?
It's called Dani Hagan and the Reverie.
Dani Hagan and the Reverie. All right, cool. So like, what style? I mean, I know it's always kind of like, people have a bunch of different genres that they are into and that they work into their music. But how would you like classify your music? What kind of sound you got going on?
I would call it blues rock. It's it's got a little bit of everything, but it's very rock and roll. And my band has really helped to define the sound and make it a little bit more lean into the rock and away from the blues, but there's always a blues element to it. Mm-hmm. Some people call it like roots rock or things like that, but yeah, it's good music.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not huge on genres because sometimes you can get really kind of like, super specific, right? Like I really like metal, and some people are like, but that's like post this, that, and that metal. It's like I'm like, how many genres are there?
Yeah, I don't like to get too wrapped up in genres. There's a place and time for it where you have to be able to package it and so that you can sell it or help somebody understand what it is that you're doing. But more often than not, it's just show up for the good music. Right? Yeah. Write a good song. Any good song should be able to be stripped down to just a vocal and one instrument, and then you build it up. And it's really the production that really helps to define what genre you get placed in. So the further along you get, the more you realize everybody leaves a fingerprint on your music. So
for sure. Yeah, I like that. Now when it comes to genres, I mean, we could definitely say, rock is its own world, right? And if you fit into at least that world of rock. And so I'm kind of glad to see that there's still people making rock music. For a while there, I'm kind of like, man, it's like slim pickings, right? Here in the LA area, we got like K-Rock. I would put it on every now and then and just be like, let me just see what's out there. I'm like, nope, can't do it, right? And I think for a while it's just really like been like like electronic music was big for a while, and then that whole mumble rap and all that. I think right now the big thing is like like Latino urban music and stuff like that, right? Like that's Bad Bunny, Peso Pluma, and all that. That's really huge right now. But there's always kind of been an audience for rock, right? Do you kind of like feel the same way about that, or how do you think like rock has kind of filled in the void there for people that need it?
Oh, I think rock always has a home. There's so much music out there, and everybody's got their own taste. But in my opinion, and because it's my favorite music, everybody loves rock and roll, right? But I also I know that I also get very wrapped up in my own music because I'm creating so much that I'm guilty of not taking the time to pay attention to what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think rock and roll is a great way to express. It was a natural progression for me because I was very wrapped up in like the singer-songwriter. It was me and an acoustic guitar as I was finding my voice and finding my sound and defining who I was as a songwriter. And then you get pushed into this category. Oh, it's a girl with a guitar. She must be country. Mm. And And I was never country. I mean, if country wants to claim me, I would be honored if they would have me, but I would never claim to be country.
Uh-huh.
And so there's these misconceptions that people just kind of label you with, I guess. But putting a little bit of rock and roll behind really heartfelt songs makes it go down easier for everybody, I guess. I don't know. I think once I stepped more into my rock and roll spotlight and rather than my singer-songwriter era, that's when things really started to take off. And I think rock and roll just makes it a little bit more accessible for everybody to listen to these romantic songs and that have like a soft message and a feminine energy to it, but it's plugged in with electric guitars and a big drum kit and it's hitting hard and there's a beat behind it. And so it's been kind of interesting to see how people respond differently when there's rock and roll.
For sure. Yeah, definitely appealing to, all kinds of different audiences and whatnot. I mentioned the whole rock thing, because like when I grew up, it was like, late 90s, early 2000s and stuff like that. And, everything on MTV, everything on the radio was like, even on the pop radios, you'd hear rock songs, and I'm like, dang, it's like not really like that anymore. So, what kind of music were you really into? Like what got you to the point where like, hey, I want to be a musician?
Well, I was raised in a very musical house. So like there was a piano in my living room and my sister was a brilliant piano player. So I wanted to play piano like my big sister. So I started teaching myself when I was 5 and then started writing music when I was 9. But I was really raised on classical music and music of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. My grandma had bought me this album. It was called Little Girls All Grown Up. And it was the music of her era, basically. And I just had it on repeat all the time. So it really wasn't until I moved to New York City for college where I started dating a boy and he introduced me to classic rock. And I was like, Journey, what is this? Muse? Who's this? Like, I didn't know that this really existed because I had a little bit of a sheltered life. I'm from North Dakota. So moving out to New York, there was an awakening, but there was the first moment where I was like, oh, I need to do something like this. There was a song by India Ari called Ready for Love. And it's this really tender, it was the first song that ever moved my soul. And I was like, I want to do something like this. And so that's what I've been pursuing ever since, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Now, right now, I think, the music industry is kind of way different than how maybe we knew it, right? Growing up and things like that. Back then people would listen to a whole album, right? And be like, this is my band, this is who I'm into. And now it seems like, with streaming and everything like that, you could have a lot more like one hit wonders and they go away and things like that, right? How do you see like yourself fitting into that, new age, like music industry, right? Because there's a lot of music out there and there's a lot more access, right? Like, I would have never thought, maybe 20 years ago, it's like, I can put myself on something like Spotify, even with something like this, like the podcast, right? And there's just so much access. People can, be DIY about it and everything. So how do you really see yourself fitting into like, this music industry?
You got to keep rolling with it. Like and redesigning your plan. Like I recorded a whole album about, I guess, a year and a half ago now. And then we realized nobody's buying a whole album. Nobody's listening to the tracks that aren't the singles. And if you put out a whole album and you're only allowed to release 4 singles, maybe 5, but you've got 12 songs on there, then okay, then these other songs are just essentially getting thrown away and they're good songs. Why waste them? So I think that's why you see a lot more EPs coming out now because everybody's attention span is so much shorter and you want every song to have its time to shine. And then the other thing is the industry has shifted so much where it's more about content, like constant release of content. So you always have to be releasing something every 2 months, every 3 months. And even that's too far of a stretch. So it's less about this, this is my baby, my full album. Now it's like, no, here's a little bite. Here's another little bite, like follow along sort of thing. And you just have to adapt. And like I did, instead of putting out a full album, now I'm putting out 2 EPs and I'm back in the recording studio working on the other one right now. So Yeah, you got to roll with the punches because it's a little wild west out here. There's no rules. There, what works 20 years ago doesn't work anymore. Nobody wants a record label. I mean, there's pros and cons to it. It doesn't hold the same esteem that it did before because everything's changed.
Mhm.
It's all about TikTok and going viral.
Yeah, like that angry guy that was singing about rich people and stuff like that on YouTube and Facebook. I forget his name, but like that guy became huge overnight, and he didn't even record his music on like in like a proper studio. I think he just recorded it on like his iPhone or something like or his phone, and like all of a sudden everybody's downloading his music or streaming his music and stuff like that. He's got concerts and things like that. So it's kind of crazy how much access there is and how different it is now. But you mentioned you gotta roll with it, you gotta keep pushing. It's no longer those days where bands are renting out big old houses and isolating themselves to make music and things like that. With those changes, right? Do you see that as like a benefit for you? Like where it's like, okay, cool, I can just pump out a song, pump out another song, or would you kind of prefer to like sit down and really get all the creativity flowing and kind of get more and more and more content at one time?
I mean, that's just how I exist. I'm constantly writing. I'm never anywhere without a lyric book next to me. So the creation part's the easy part. That I do in my sleep, essentially.
Mm.
It's the business side of things where it gets a little bit more strategic, and it has to be that way. But yeah, I surround myself with creative people. I'm performing nonstop. I mean, there is a life outside of social media, shockingly. And but I've learned to always hit the record button because if it didn't happen on Instagram or TikTok, did it happen at all?
Wow.
But I like playing the game. I like releasing music and I like learning about the music industry and the business side of things. Because if it was just about being one of the most creative people in the room, I would have been a household name by now. But that's not even the goal for me at this point. I just want to make my music. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Because you can have some really creative people out there. You can have like the greatest musician out there, but if they don't know how to get ears on them, it's like you're never going to hear about them, right? And it is kind of like playing chess with that. I mean, back in the day, I like playing music. I was in a few bands, and to me, it was just like, damn, I can't do this. I'm like, I need to make money. It was kind of discouraging, because I would play like the shows like on the Sunset Strip, like the Whiskey, the Roxy, and things like that. And it's like, okay, cool, we gotta sell how many tickets? Oh shit! Like if we can't sell them, we got to eat the cost. And it was really discouraging, right? So did you kind of have any of those growing pains where it's like I'm trying to establish my audience, trying to get these people to the shows, trying to get these people to to listen to me? And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most stressful things for me as an artist is when I'm playing a local show is that pressure to have people show up, to have an audience, because in a dream world, I would be playing these venues that have a built-in crowd where I'm like, I can steal you as my audience, but the venues are counting on the artist to bring in the audience. So it's tricky. There's always like I'm not an anxious person at all, but there's always an anxiety before the show, not stage fright, like get me up on stage as quickly as possible. But it's that anxiety of like, is anybody going to show up? Am I going to be playing to, my cousin in the back row or, like, is anybody going to be there? And they always do. They always show up. And there has been growing pains. They're nonstop actually, which is a good thing, which means there's growth happening. Was playing these teeny tiny like dive bar, hole in the wall bars years ago, and I just headlined at the Whiskey a couple weeks ago. So there's been an amazing progression, but that fear of like, is anybody going to show up? Will they like me?
Uh-huh.
That doesn't go anywhere. But I think I've had the most fun going out on tour because there's a lot less pressure for because we get hired as like the entertainment to add a venue. And so there is a built-in crowd, and people don't care who you are. They just show up for the music. And so they're just ravenous for the music. And that's where it gets to be a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, and I like that, that you're talking about like that there's still people out there that want to discover new music, right? They want to experience new music. I wish that scene were still alive right there in like the Sunset Strip. I feel like there's a lot of potential, right? To go.
It is
I don't know
still alive. I went to the Roxy and the Rainbow Room last night. It was popping.
Or maybe I'm just out of it. I'm like getting older and I don't get out there, but I think there was like a dull period, but that's really cool then. If it's getting to the point where people are, they want to hear new bands and things like that, real quick, you mentioned, having that feeling of like, is the audience going to come and things like that, right? I think I've told this story a little bit before in the podcast, but I was in a band and we were playing a show at like a cafe, and turns out that the band that was playing before us was opening was Paramore, right? And it was really cool. We thought like, oh, cool, we have such a big crowd. I'm like, what did we do differently? Because we were closing, right? And Paramore brought a huge crowd and everything, and that was like they used to play there weekly. It was a cafe that's no longer there in Azusa, and it was once they finished. The reason they played first is because they had another show that night, so we had a huge crowd, right? Paramore opens up, and then all of a sudden their crowd goes with them. Right. And you mentioned, you're playing in front of, your cousin and aunt and uncle and everything. That's what we were doing. Right. So, I could definitely, I can definitely relate to that whole anxiety behind that because I've experienced it and everything. But would you say, you all, with the touring and everything, right, have started to kind of establish, your fan base, your loyal people that they discovered you and they're like, damn, I'm going to like everything on their Instagram, right? I'm going to listen to everything on Spotify. Do you connect with those people like on social media and things like that?
Yeah, social media has just been a really great way to build that connection, that actual conversation and the personal aspect of it. You could, rather it being this removed growing up listening to, Britney Spears or something, where you never had that opportunity to have a conversation with them. So it's been interesting to watch my fan base grow, like my follower count. It's small, but it's mighty, and I think that's better than there's people out there that buy their followers and then, they have 57,000 followers, but only 25 people are liking their post. It's like, that doesn't quite add up. So you kind of see through the smoke and the mirrors, I guess. But yeah, it's been interesting to watch that growth and try and fuel the fire a little bit. And it's frustrating at the same time because the market is so oversaturated and social media is oversaturated, and it's less about being social and it's more about, running your own personal keeping up with Kardashian show about your own life. And everybody has that going for themselves. So, it makes it accessible for everybody to put out their own music, which is amazing. There's plenty of room for all of us here, but it's really hard to cut through the masses and rise to the top. So
for sure. Yeah. It's just so many options. Right. And so, yeah, you got to really kind of find a way to stand out or, to draw in those people. Now, if we're talking about like, hey, go check out Dani Hagan and the Reverie, right? What can people expect? What kind of, music or what can they expect listening to you and your band?
Well, we're a rock band, so it's kind of in the vein of Gary Clark Jr. or what was that? What was the name of that band? I don't know why they just popped into my head. Your Sex on Fire. Do you remember that song?
Kings of Leon. Yeah.
Kings of Leon. It's kind of like a Kings of Leon vibe. And they're, yeah. So it's rock. But it's also very heartfelt. I'm heavily influenced by the band Nothing But Thieves, which is a UK rock band. And so they've been really influential in my songwriting and the sound that we've been establishing over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And your latest, well, I mean, from what I saw on Spotify, your latest work was called "Kissing You."
Yes, that's the title of the EP is Kissing You.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's one song you can point to and be like, all right, if you're brand new to listening to us, this is one you got to listen to right now because this is going to make you a fan.
You got to check out the song Nothing But Anywhere But Home is the most recent song that we put out, and that's on the Kissing You EP. And it's a fun rock song. It's kind of anthemic and all about, I wrote it about, I wrote it during the pandemic where I just wanted to get out of the house. I wanted to be anywhere but home because that's the only place I'd been for a year, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the origin story of Anywhere But Home. But it turned out to be like this really rocking song, and everybody loves it. It gets the house dancing along and singing along. So that would be a good one to check out first.
All right, so anywhere but home. I like that concept, you know, because like I think a lot of people during that whole pandemic, for a while, music was like live music was dead, you know, and that was like you know, it's terrible. I mean, I think that's why so many people, you know, they started like doing their own thing. So many people that I talk to these days, like they have a side hustle, they have some sort of, you know, hobby that they picked up on during those times. Like only reason I did this whole little podcast thing is I'm like I'm bored, like I want to talk to people, you know. So that's a cool concept. So I'm gonna check that out for sure as well. Now, you know, you mentioned earlier, like with the whole music thing, like, hey, it's not even about, you know, becoming like famous or a household name or anything like that. So what is your motivation, right? Why do you do this? Like, I'm sure, you know, and you've had some success with this, you know, but I'm sure at first people were like, hey, that's a pipe dream. Like, not, you know, maybe you had a good circle behind you, but you always hear that as a creative person, like that's a pipe dream, like get a real job and things like that, you know. But what drives you? What do you want to do with this whole music thing?
You know, nobody ever told me to get a real job.
Well, then you got good people behind you, right? That's good. I mean, I'm glad to hear that, you know, because so many people are stifled by reality a lot of the times, and friends and family, you know, they don't see what you see a lot of the time. So I'm glad to hear that from you because that's different. I don't typically hear that, but yeah, what is it, you know, you're really looking to do here?
I think that I have a gift of expressing through music, and a lot of people have trouble tapping into their emotions, putting words to it, being able to verbalize what their experiences or communicate that. And I think that's why music's so powerful. When you hear a song, you're like, oh, wait, that's what I'm feeling. That's the music makes you experience it in a different way. That's so powerful. And I love playing that role for people. So I've always felt like that was part of my purpose, is to share love through music. And again, rock and roll has been a great conduit for me of just getting out to so many people. And I love the connection. I love it's just such a natural thing for me I hear these melodies, I hear the lyrics, I hear somebody else's story, and I'll write a song about their story, or and it's just a really great way to communicate and help people experience their own experiences on a different level, I guess. So I've just always known it was my purpose to be an entertainer, to be an artist. And my parents, you know, they allowed me to be so delusional that they never asked any questions, and they supported every wild jump of mine of like leaving North Dakota and going to New York City, and then leaving New York and heading over to Los Angeles. And I think the only people that were ever like, when are you going to get a real job? It was probably my brothers. And that was just a few years ago. And they're like, are you still out there doing that? You know, because they're married with kids and all that. So
now, you know, now I don't want to get too personal, and you know, I don't want it to be like a tough question here, but you know, because it is a creative thing, and you know, you mentioned, you know, nobody really told you, hey, get a real job. Is this a thing where, you know, music can pay the bills, right? I know, you know, most people that have like a creative outlet like this, you know, they have to have, you know, essentially, you know, their 9 to 5, right? And is music something that can pay the bills?
Well, that's always the goal. But the beauty of living in Los Angeles is everybody is a something slash something slash something. So, um, while I am a full-time musician, I'm also a Pilates instructor. I'm really deep into the health and wellness industry because that's another passion of mine. I have multiple passions that create multiple streams of income. And so I love my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So I mean, so with that, you do have room to still explore that creativity while, making sure you don't have to live in a shoebox in LA, right? With the rent, how high it is out here. Now you mentioned you grew up in South Dakota, right? South
North
Dakota, right?
Dakota. Yeah.
North Dakota. Sorry, I'm like over here. I got my Dakotas mixed up. North Dakota. And what was that switch like from going from like North Dakota to like the big cities, right?
Well, my mom had won, I haven't thought about this in forever. My mom won a raffle when I was like a senior in high school. She won a trip for two to New York City. It was like 3 days and 2 nights in New York City. And so she was like, she took me, we went on a mother-daughter trip. And she said, this is probably the only time we're ever going to get to New York City. Let's go all out. We extended the trip. We went for like 8 days thinking that this is our one time to get out of North Dakota. And of course, fast forward a year later, I'm living there. So I loved it. It was, North Dakota was an incredible place to grow up. But like I mentioned before, it was a little bit on the sheltered side. It has a very defined culture, but it's a small culture, and then to get out to the big cities and there's all these different people and personalities and cultures. And it was invigorating for me. So, and I've been fortunate many times in my life where all the stars kind of just line up in front of me and I just have to walk in that direction. So that's how I got to New York. That's how I got to LA, is like when I jumped from New York to LA, I was just thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, the restaurant that I had been working at in New York City, they had a restaurant in LA. So they'd let me transfer. And then a manager offered me to move out and that they would represent me. And then I had a friend that had an open room. And I was like, oh, well, the silver platter has been laid in front of me. All I have to do is accept it. So, so just follow the stars and I land where I land, I guess.
The universe wanted you to get out there and put that music out there, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and that's cool. So now that you're in LA, right? So I had for example last episode on the podcast, somebody from Virginia who's trying to become an actress out there, right? And I kind of mentioned like, hey, everybody refers to entertainment and acting and all that as Hollywood, right? Is that like, you have any aspirations of moving to Hollywood? And it was like, no, I can do this from Virginia, right? So, you moving to New York and then LA, right? Do you think this is something you could have done in North Dakota had you stayed there?
To some degree, but I think there's a limit, and for me, by the time I graduated high school, I had already accomplished everything that I could in that city. I was already part of every performance venue. I was at the top. There was nowhere else for me to go had I stayed there. That's one of the reasons why I left. And I would have missed out on so many life experiences. So yeah, if there's a will, there's a way. You could absolutely do it. But I guess my lens isn't just purpose. My purpose isn't success. My purpose is connection and love. And I had to get out and have a bigger world to explore that way. And that's led me to greater success. So I think if I would have stayed in North Dakota, I probably would have found a guy, gotten married and had a 9-to-5 job and played guitar for myself. And then I'd be a really sad person. Or maybe I'd be really happy but that wasn't the route for me. That wasn't the path that lit me up. So.
Right. And it wouldn't be like, hey, you had to defer your dreams just to kind of fit the mold. Yeah.
Yeah. And with social media, a lot of people are finding their success. You can be in North Dakota and get a viral song. But chances are, if you do find that certain level of success, you're going to get an invitation to a bigger city, But I can make music from anywhere.
Mhm.
And like I said, I'm not trying to be a household name at this point. It's not, I want an audience. And that's why I'm loving going out on tour. Like I'm in these middle of nowhere towns and I'm the entertainment coming through. The whole town shows up and then I wind up with this whole new fan base. And I move on to the
Yeah.
next town. And I've really been enjoying that aspect because it doesn't necessarily social media, being a social media star doesn't translate to being a live performance artist, right? There's so
Mm.
many people that are singing in their bathrooms or in their stairwells and going viral on TikTok, which is amazing for them. That's awesome. But that's not the same thing as having the live performance experience of knowing what it's like to be with a full band on a stage with a whole audience full of people. That's just where I thrive. That's where my personal preference is, I play the game of social media and I have fun with it. And it's an element of what I do. It's almost a necessary evil, I guess. But again, I've come around to finding a way to enjoy it. But you can't replace that live performance and the opportunities that these bigger cities have in terms of the entertainment world for me.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? You could have somebody, singing in their car, in their closet, and in their bathtub or something, and then everybody's like, "Wow, they're a really great singer on TikTok or something like that." But you're right. I think I can't, put my finger on it, but I know I've heard of, people who have gone from like social media fame to like doing performances of some sort, whether it's like comedy or music or something like that. And some of them don't fare very well because you're right. You need to have that little bit of extra to entertain people live. Like it's not something that a lot of people have, right? You have to be able to read your audience and see which way you're going to guide them and things like that. So
If that's the route that you want to go, like if you can live your life on a screen and have that be, if that's your version of success, good for you. But for me personally, I I suffocate on a screen. Like I want this out of my face. It's here all the time. Again, that's just my personal path is live performance. That I'm a live performance artist.
so you're not the type that goes to a concert and has their phone like this the whole time.
No, I'd rather watch it with my eyes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
I was sitting with my manager the other day, and he gave me one of the greatest compliments. But it's a problem that we have right now is that my live performance is better than my recorded music. And my recorded music is amazing because I'm in the studio with Michael Blue, who's known for Colby Calais and Jason Mraz and One Republic, and I've got Greg Bissonette as my drummer on the tracks, and he's Ringo Starr's drummer. Like the music is amazing, but our live performance is better because I'm a live performance artist, and that's the bridge that we're trying to gap right now is, okay, how do we level these out? Because our live show is just so good right now. We need to bring some of that element and put it into the new recordings that we're doing because there's been growth, there's been growing pains, and now it's time to, yeah. So we're making a few adjustments as we're moving forward.
yeah, trying to capture that magic in a bottle, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, since you're basically a transplant to LA, I've got
Mhm.
some LA questions for you. All right.
Sure.
Now, I've talked to a lot of people that have grown up in different states and like they get here and they try the food and they're like, oh my God, I'm in heaven, right? Are you a big LA like foodie these days?
I am. Once upon a time I was a chef in a past life. And I've had a lot of different creative lives along the way. But I love food. And growing up in North Dakota, I'm a vegetarian, and North Dakota is not accommodating to vegetarians.
Hmm.
So living out here where I can go into a restaurant and it's a vegetarian restaurant, you mean I can order anything off the menu? This is absolutely overwhelming for me. I'm so limited to just like thinking that there's going to be a side salad or maybe a side of vegetables or something. And that's what I'm stuck with ordering. But in LA, there's just the food's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, okay, so that kind of eliminates my next question, but maybe not. I was gonna say, a lot of people like they have like the favorite like burger place, but if you're not a burger person, I don't know. Well, let's just see. In and Out. What's your thoughts on In and Out?
Overrated.
Overrated. All right.
I
I'm
mean,
not offended, but a lot of people listening probably are.
Again, I'm limited on what I can have there. Like I'm
Uh-huh.
not a fast food person. I love Taco Bell because I can sub anything out with beans and I can make it vegetarian. But I think the only thing that I was able to eat off the In-N-Out menu was their French fries, and not my style.
Hmm. Yeah. No, they're not very good. Yeah. Like if you put like the all the stuff on there, like I mean, but you probably don't need like the cheese and everything on there. It's like
Yeah, they're
it's.
like soggy and mushy and I don't know.
Oh, all right, I got another one then. Let's see. I mean, and this you could probably, you probably tried some good Mexican food, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, because like I remember I worked with a principal at a school one time, and she was talking about she grew up in Ohio, right? And they got a Taco Bell out there, and she's like, "Wow, authentic Mexican food, right? This is so cool." And then she moved to California, and she goes like, "Oh no, they had it all wrong." Right? So I mean, have you gotten into like the Mexican food scene out here at all?
Yeah, well, Gracias Madre is amazing. And that's a vegetarian Mexican restaurant, and it's so good and just down the street from me. So I go there a lot. Um, I'm terrible with remembering names. That's like one of my flaws as a human. I can't remember the names of some of the restaurants that I've been to. Because I can tell you right where it is. It's on.
Uh-huh.
There's a couple of really good Mexican places out here, but anywhere that has a good quesadilla, I'm easy to please.
Nice. All right, and then one more little California question here. Like, do you like that we don't really have seasons?
I miss having the seasons because
Okay.
I'm from North Dakota, where we have the extreme of all four seasons, and winter
Uh-huh.
lasts like the length of half the year at least. So, but I really love seasons. But I love California. As I look out my window, I'm like, I love California. It's winter in California right now, which means it rains every couple of days.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, if that, right? I'm like,
yeah.
it's still pretty, pretty up there. Maybe like in the upper 70s or whatever, or low 80s even, right? And that's that's where we're at in November.
I like to go home just long enough to build a snowman and then leave.
Yeah.
I get a little dose of it and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying living in the Golden State here, right? Now back to the music, right? What are some things right now that you and your band are working on as far as like maybe touring or new music or anything like that? What are some projects that are coming up?
Well, we've got a couple of tour dates coming up in December, just small little one-offs. We're going up to like Big Sur and just up to Ventura. But the big thing that I'm working towards right now is I'm booked in the recording studio. So I'm narrowed down. I wrote so many songs over the last year, and I've narrowed it down to my top 7 choices, and we're probably going to record 4 of those. So that's my big focus right now. And then in January, we're headed to Arizona and New York. And then I'll probably be heading back to London to shoot music videos, hopefully in January or February.
Nice, nice. So keep them busy for sure.
Keep him busy because LA kind of goes quiet through November, December, halfway through January. So that's where all the behind the scenes work happens. Where, I'm going to be in the studio recording. We're going to do photo shoots. We're going to do pre-production for all the music videos and get a game plan going for the rest of the year and for the rollout for the next EP. So a lot of creativity and a lot of business focus that'll be happening as well.
Hmm. And so, like, I'll be putting this episode out, tomorrow as we speak, right? What's your next show that someone in like Southern California will be able to go to? Is that the one you said, Big Sur?
Yeah, Big Sur, we are performing at the Fernwood Resort in Big Sur. I performed there last year and I rolled up. I was like, this is not what I was expecting because it was called the Fernwood Resort. So I thought it was going to be like this big luxe, like Big Sur resort. And you roll up and it's a motel. It's like a little, and there's apparently it's a big property. I didn't get to see the whole property, but there's like tents everywhere. So it's like a camping resort. And everybody turned up. They've got this great tiny little stage, and it's in this wooden building, like it's a log cabin kind of thing.
Mm.
And it was a riot. It was so much fun. So I'm really excited to go back to that show. And then we're performing at Namba Arts in Ventura. I've never
Ah,
played there before, so that's going to be in December as well.
what are the dates on those? So if anybody's listening, can check that out if they're around.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I have this book next to me to remember. It's so much to keep track of, which is a good problem to have. So
Ah,
on December 16th, we'll be at the Namba Arts in Ventura, California. And then December 9th is when we're at the Fernwood.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anybody checks out Dani Hagan and the Reverie, right? You like it, check those shows out. Keep that live music alive, like I think that's something that's again, I'm hoping it comes back big, right? I'm talking about like early 2000s big where everybody was listening to bands and everything.
I hope so. That's what we're going for.
I can't believe I was like, what, 12, 11 years, 12, maybe 13 years old, quoting all the Limp Bizkit songs and everything and all the cuss words and everything, you know. Um,
Yeah.
hopefully when they're quoting your songs, they keep it clean, right?
Yeah, I keep it pretty clean. I'm late to the party, but I recently discovered Nirvana, so I've been covering Nirvana a lot lately. But there's been a little bit of like grunge influence coming into my music now because of Nirvana.
Hold on a minute. I can't let that one go. You recently discovered Nirvana.
I mean, I always knew who they were, but I never listened to their music because again, I wasn't raised on rock music. So
Uh-huh.
my education has continued as an adult.
I see. So it's like kind of like digging into that time capsule and you're like, oh, this is really cool. That's how I felt about like funk, like disco and funk and stuff like that. I really love like, music with like that heavy bass line. And when I discovered that, I'm like, wow, it's like I know it's been around for decades, but I'm like, man, this is amazing, right?
There's
And you just
something
kind of
to that, yeah.
get into
For
that rabbit hole, yeah.
I tend to be pretty consumed with my own creation because I'm always writing, I'm always thinking, I'm always creating music. So I'm guilty of not listening to other people's music,
Hmm.
which is why I kind of lack influences sometimes. But I'm still being educated. I'm
Yeah.
expanding my knowledge.
Yeah, so Nirvana, did you get into any other bands after Nirvana, like Soundgarden or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean all of them. And I'm in the jam circuit in Los Angeles. So it's like we do different jam nights throughout the city where all the musicians turn up and you have to learn a song without any rehearsal and just get up there and perform it. And so that's really expanded my knowledge of different bands and different songs and really enriched my own personal music because now I do have these rock influences that are coming in. So it's been really awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you ever listen to like Danzig or something, you do a cover of Mother, let me know because that's my karaoke go-to song right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know that song or no?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna put that one on your list, Danny. It's
Okay.
Mother by Danzig. Yeah.
Mother
The
by Danzig. I'll
yeah, the
check it
former the former singer of the Misfits. Yeah. Yeah. But other than that, right? We mentioned playing the social media game. Where can people find you on social media?
Dani Hagan, it's Dani. Last name is Hagan. So you can search me anywhere: Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Music videos are a big part of my expression of my music. So there's always YouTube's pretty important to me because it is the visual aspect of the songs. So check me out there. But you can also just go to DaniHagan.com and all the links are all on one page for you.
That's interesting. You mentioned a music video. That's kind of a lost art now too. You know,
No, it's not.
I
No,
think
it's
I think it is. Like I mean, I don't like that it is because I loved music videos. I grew up on MTV,
not.
but like I think they're less, like storytelling. They used to be so much about storytelling, right?
Hmm.
And it's more just like shoot the band, okay? And I think it's almost like back to like the 80s, right? Where they're just kind of shooting the band like at a concert or like in a like a simple background. But I mean, I wish there were more music videos.
Well, there's trends that run through music videos as well. Like the storyline music videos didn't do as well. The music videos that have just the band in like a warehouse setting, those are the ones that are doing better. So those are the ones that we shoot. So
Mm,
yeah, there's a lot of strategy that goes behind the creativity.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess like if it's cyclical like that, then I guess I wouldn't know these days. I don't think I listen to anything past like the mid 2000s at this point, right? If it's not Red Hot Chili Peppers and Sublime and things like that, maybe I don't really give it too much of a shot anymore. But that it's just like you mentioned, it's a lot more than meets the eye, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in it like yourself, you got to understand that. Anything else you want to throw out there to the podcast world about you and your band, or just in general?
Well, I mean, I would love everybody to check out my music. Check it out on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you consume your content from. I'm really proud of the Kissing You album, and I started putting it together about 2 years ago now. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the next chapter to start. But now that I finally put out the EP and the reviews are coming in, and the reviews have been really overwhelmingly good. So I've been kind of reinvigorated about my own music. So I am really proud of the Kissing You album that came out. And there's a little bit of everything. There's love, there's heartbreak, there's a little chaos, little feel good. So check it out and let me know what you think of it. I'd love to hear from you.
For sure. All right, Dani. So thank you again for being on today. Wish you a lot of luck, and if I'm ever able to catch a show around here, I'll make sure to to hold up my Dani Hagan sign right in the crowd and everything like that.
I'll be looking for you in the audience.
Yeah, I'll make sure to bring some fries other than In-N-Out for sure.
Awesome. Right. I look forward to it.
Yeah, but definitely thank you again. And for everybody listening at home, I appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night.
Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast, and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.